Well, I was in the market for a teacher, and an old friend wrote to me and said, I'm coming to Los Angeles with this great teacher, and you absolutely must see him. Trungpa swept through America just like a rocket. He starts traveling all over the country. He teaches right away, all the time.
Sit on the cushion, but don't make a big deal about that. Now you're going to meditate. Just sit down and relax.
When I met Trungpa Rinpoche, I probably cried for 2 hours. You know, a sense of having met something that was so deeply precious to me and not having any idea why.
He knew when the Chinese invaded Tibet, it wasn't just a question of taking the teachings out and putting them under your robe and getting the hell out of the country. It was a question of bringing that living wisdom to a brand new culture, thousands of miles and a completely different language away.
And finally, you begin to actually let go of your aggression, and you begin to hear much better and see much better. When you give more and more of this uptightness of holding back and
a
resentment.
Dharma that was not some kind of specialized, cloistered, monastic Dharma, but a Dharma that was fully integrated with society and with life.
He dove into Western life. He drank, he smoked, he broke all the rules. He was immediately working with a new energy, the energy that said, tell it to us, give it to us, tell us what to do, we'll make it happen. And he had every confidence that we would get it.
I spent a lot of time in some kind of retreat context and also traveling with him. And then I'd go off and be a crazy person, smuggling cocaine in South America. I knew I was either going to go on the run or I was going to prison for a long time at that point. And he told me I should stay and face it. And he said that even if I was in prison for a long time, I could still practice and I could still work with him as my teacher. It wasn't until years later in prison, really, that I was able to finally do what he'd been asking all of us to do for a long time, which was really do the practice and really integrate it so that we weren't just trying to get this contact high from him, but to really be able to generate that within ourselves.
I do liken the sort of spread of Dharma from India to Tibet that happened between the 7th and the 10th century to when it went from Tibet via India to the West. Marpa and the great translators, they did make these arduous journeys to get to India. They walked for days, months even, and they went back again and helped spread the Dharma.
I mean, these guys had it tough, you know, but they did it, you know, and did a good job of translating it from Sanskrit into Tibetan. They did it without Microsoft Word and any other kind of editing processes. Most of my training is so far is in Tibetan, Tibetan grammar, get a little bit of history, some Dharma, a little bit of debate. It's just getting started.
To me, Tibet is like, for I guess 1,000 years almost, you had all these brilliant masters. Every generation produced these legendary meditators and scholars. It just staggers the mind to imagine the combined willpower and brain power that was directed towards the single goal of developing spiritual technology for freeing the human mind.
You probably had more books in Tibet than you did in any other society. They were manuscripts, so there was maybe 1 or 2 copies in the entire country. But they're disappearing, they're fading. Then I decided, well, why don't we do something else? So we put it on the web. We've got over 10,000 volumes that anybody can download.
If we look at this expansion of Buddhism coming out of Asia, and then we see Buddhism has already evolved. It's not stayed static anywhere for the last 2,500 years. It's always assimilated, adapted for the particular cultures and so forth. Now it's adapting to world culture.
The point was East-West meeting. I feel not on religion, not as a religion, but simply the science of mind.
I've had the conjecture that looking at brain changes associated with meditation is something worth doing for decades. It is, I think, quite remarkable how close a parallel there is between our modern understanding of neuroplasticity and the Buddhist notions of transformation.
And I'm just going to line up and come straight down, land the first sensor. Be sure the midline is set correctly.
In simple terms, neuroplasticity means that the brain can change in response to experience.
For meditation, for example, prefrontal cortex, is one of the main areas that we look, so left and right.
So now we see, as in this Mind and Life meeting with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, we see that traditional Buddhist teachings are brought into a completely modern, contemporary context.
Now, Alan has talked in detail about what he presented as the truth.
This is a time when the Tibetans also can benefit from the strengths of Western culture.
And training in the 4 immeasurables.
Religions are always changing, and there's a huge change when you cross a cultural frontier.
There's always the core in the Dharma that brings me back, but there are cultural influences that put me off, particularly around some women's issues.
There's a lot of denial and ignoring, because it's painful to know that the religion you've given your life to has this really major flaw. You look even here in this Western this ceremony, there's not a single woman in the front row. When you your whole system so that women don't end up trained well enough to sit in the front row, there's a problem.
Right now, there is no Geshe degree for nuns. Geshe is basically a degree that, well, monks get, usually monks get when they have studied the main 5 texts. There's a lot of debate about giving that title to nuns who are now doing the same studies.
That is one of the major things the West has to offer the Tibetan Buddhism, is a new way of seeing women and a way of examining the cultural influences on the Dharma.
So in this sense, you could say with karma, of course, strictly speaking, karma means action. So action has 3 fold.
Buddhism must fully integrate into the 21st century. We can't just take it as a museum piece.
The system doesn't port over perfectly the system that they'd set up there. It doesn't mesh perfectly with our society.
Everything seems to be very flashy, coming from just like, wow, all these paintings and like stuff like that.
When I first came and saw all these white middle-class Americans bowing to this Asian man, I'm like, this is so weird.
These questions of how much is culture and how much is dharma, definitely distinctions need to be understood by the student. I would really encourage the students to really do this, but I would think Western people are wasting their time when they are ironing the scarf and trying to unfold them and fold them. That's a bit of a waste of time.
Even I thought before, tradition I thought not that important tradition. Now when I really look, tradition is very important. Like example, remembering the root text. I thought many Westerns, why need to remember the text? It's too much energy. In West, we not do this anymore. When we grow up, the teachers say, if you not remember root text, you're empty. So everything need to be within yourself.
I like challenges, so this kind of thing where you can just practically, it's very pragmatic religion, you can work on yourself in a way every day, every moment of your life.
Be present. Be now. Be awake. No matter how. Be warm. You're free to give. Drop illusion and learn to live.
So when you have the high top peak intensity, you will so enjoy.
Coming to the Dharma is no problem. You can come from anger, you can come from jealousy, you can come from woundedness, you can come from curiosity, and you can come anything you can come. Once you come, then you have to be open. Then you see how the path goes.
I'm in Mexico. I'm wearing the Mexican style of dress to show where I am. The masala, you sit somewhere here.
I travel with Rinpoche mostly when he travels to the West, which means Europe, the Americas. So I get to be in a very close proximity with Rinpoche and not only listen to the teachings, but also seeing how Rinpoche puts the Dharma into everyday life.
I can be staying in my student house or friend house or hotel. I try to act like I'm sitting in my home.
Rinpoche does a lot of his activities quite spontaneous.
5 minutes more? Yeah?
And so I was thinking that we're going to be late, you know, kind of in the morning. Rinpoche is calm, as he always is, and calms me down, of course.
In the 21st century, how to teach. You don't have to change teaching. You don't have to change the meaning of teaching. But it's just a matter of how to present.
Welcome. I would like to introduce meditation.
We exist in a state of perpetual interdependence.
Watching spinning samsara.
The Interdependence Project.
Honestly, if Americans' only option was to study completely traditional Tibetan Buddhism, I don't think many people would be interested in Buddhism.
I haven't registered. Okay. We came to the open house last week.
At the same time, what we found at the Interdependence Project is that people want teachings to be accessible and relevant to their life. They don't want them watered down.